Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Each month, TD Ameritrade pulls a sample from its client base of more than 13 million funded accounts, which includes all accounts that completed a trade in the past month to get a sense of how retail investors are approaching the market. This is called the TD Ameritrade Investor Movement Index, and for September, it shows TD Ameritrade clients took advantage of the market volatility to increase exposure to the highest levels we've seen this year. Joining me to dive into the details of the IMX data is Kinahan, Chief Market Strategist at TD Ameritrade. JJ, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talk.
Thanks for having me, Jill. Always happy to be here.
Yeah, and JJ, I was not expecting to see the IMX up nearly 16%, in which was a pretty volatile month of trade.
Yeah, it really was amazing. But, then, Jill, I look at this, and you and I, you're nice enough to talk to us every month about this. And so if you think about when we talked after March, after April, we said a lot of our clients were getting involved, really starting to buy some things. But I think there's this other element of clients that didn't get involved. And so when we saw this sell-off at the beginning of September, people, buying the dip has been a good strategy over the last 10 years. Let's face it, it's worked out. And the other end is, I think, all those people who were like, oh, I should have bought at this price, I should have bought it at this price, finally pulled the trigger a little bit and said, you know what, I'm not missing out if we go higher. And many big, stocks that are on this list, the Apples of the world, Microsofts of the world, et cetera, they had an opportunity to buy them at a more attractive level, and so they did pull the trigger. And I think that's the primary driver behind what happened this month, Joe.
Yeah, and the buys totally made sense. I mean, it was the stocks that led us before COVID-19, led us through COVID-19, and here we are, all consumer technology, consumer electronics, discretionary. Those are the names that are working, and not too much of a surprise to see the sells, particularly with the airlines.
No, it is interesting. You saw Delta Airlines, you saw Royal Caribbean on that list. And as you remember, back in March and April, our clients were actually buyers of these airlines and travel stocks. They have had a rally, but they just kind of had a very difficult time since then. So I think it's a matter of those who are continuing to hang on are like, you know what, it's going to be a tough time. If you remember, throughout September and still to this day, we didn't know if we would have any kind of a deal. Obviously the market's up today, I think, on some hopes that there may be some sort of stimulus package. But as the airlines started to come toward the end of September, I think it made people a little bit nervous that if something didn't get done, many of them were going to end up laying off people or having to cut back flights, et cetera. And so I think some of the optimism that existed in late spring, early summer started to fade a little bit in terms of the travel industry.
Yeah, and you know what, JJ, the next 31 days are certainly going to be interesting. In fact, the next time we meet, we will have already been through the election. Now, it remains to be seen if things will end November 3rd that night, or if we're going to continue with some of that volatility through the election based on how the results will work out. I mean, this certainly is unprecedented.
Well, I think if you look at the VIX curve, what it's telling us is that it won't end November 3rd. And to be honest with you, Jill, because we have this mail-in campaign, voting campaign now, that's never really existed to certainly the level we already know it started to exist, and there's no reason to expect that it won't be huge. It's going to be very difficult to get all that in by November 3rd. So what the VIX futures curve is kind of telling us is you should be prepared for volatility, maybe out till almost mid-December as this gets figured out. So I think next time you and I meet, we'll be saying, well, we have a leader, but we don't yet have the winner in the class.
All good points, JJ. Thanks for joining us as always.
Always a pleasure, Jill. Thank you.
You got it. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.